Some mornings change everything. You just don't know it yet. For Dr. Melissa Chun, this Tuesday started like any other, precisely planned, perfectly controlled. 8 months pregnant with twins, every detail of her life was calculated down to the minute. Her husband David, a Marine serving overseas, had insisted she adopt Ranger, a retired military working dog trained to detect explosives in Afghanistan. For 4 years, Ranger had been the perfect companion. Disciplined, obedient, predictable. Until today. Something had shifted in the dog that morning. He paced frantically, refusing to eat, his ears tracking sounds Melissa couldn't hear. When she tried to leave for her weekly grocery run, Ranger did something he'd never done before. He blocked her path. And then, he grabbed her dress in his teeth and pulled. This wasn't disobedience. This was something else entirely. Her husband's words echoed in her mind. If Ranger alerts to something, you trust him. No questions. His nose saved my life 3 times. Melissa was about to discover that some instincts can't be explained. Only trusted. And that in the next hour, that trust would mean the difference between life and death for people she'd never met. This is the true story of the day a dog knew what no human could see. Melissa tried everything to get past Ranger. Commands. Treats. She even tried to physically move him aside. Nothing worked. The 75-pound Belgian Malinois was a wall of pure determination. He released her dress only to clamp gently onto her wrist, applying just enough pressure to guide without hurting. He was pulling her toward the back door, away from her car, away from her planned route, away from everything that made logical sense. Every fiber of Melissa's analytical mind screamed at her to resist. She had a schedule. Appointments. A routine that kept her world safe and predictable while her husband served half a world away. But Ranger's eyes held something she'd never seen before. Not just urgency. Desperation. She remembered the videos David had shown her, Ranger alerting to IEDs in Afghanistan, his body language that had saved entire units from catastrophic explosions. The same body language he was showing now. So against every logical instinct, Melissa made a choice. She stopped fighting. She let her combat-trained dog lead her through the back door, across the yard she'd carefully maintained, past the garden she'd planted, toward the overgrown fence line at the edge of their property. A place she never went. A place that looked like absolutely nothing. But Ranger knew different. His entire body was rigid, every muscle locked in the alert posture that meant one thing: I found something. And you need to see it. Now. The drainage ditch was a forgotten wasteland, overgrown with weeds, littered with trash, the kind of place you walk past every day without a second glance. But Ranger pulled Melissa into the tall grass with singular focus. And then he stopped. Saturday. And stared. The textbook alert of a military working dog who'd found his target. Melissa pushed aside the vegetation, expecting to find a dead animal. Instead, she found a nightmare. A teenage girl. 14, maybe 15 years old. Curled in the fetal position, her face bruised and swollen, her wrists marked with angry ligature wounds. Barely conscious. For a moment, Melissa couldn't breathe. Couldn't process what she was seeing. The girl's eyes fluttered open, terrified, feral, like a trapped animal expecting another predator. But then she saw Melissa's pregnant belly, and something shifted. A flicker of desperate hope. "Please," the girl whispered through cracked, bleeding lips. "He took me. 11 days ago. I escaped this morning, but I can't run anymore. And he's coming back. He always comes back." Her name was Riley. And she was about to become the only survivor of a serial predator who'd haunted 3 states for 4 years. Melissa's hands shook as she dialed 911. 1 bar of signal. The dispatcher's calm voice promising help was on the way. 2 minutes. Just hold on for 2 minutes. But then Melissa heard something that turned her blood to ice. A car engine. Slowing on the nearby access road. A door slamming. And a man's voice, sing-song and sickening. "Riley? Riley, sweetheart, where are you? I brought your medicine." Riley went rigid with terror. And Ranger's low growl confirmed what Melissa's racing heart already knew. The predator had returned to claim his prey. "Stay down," Melissa hissed, pulling Riley deeper into the grass. Her heart hammered so violently she thought her ribs might crack. The twins inside her kicked frantically, as if they too sensed the danger approaching. Ranger positioned himself between them and the footsteps, body coiled, teeth bared, every ounce of his combat training suddenly, terrifyingly activated. Through gaps in the weeds, Melissa caught glimpses of him. Mid-30s. Average height. Utterly, horrifyingly ordinary-looking. He could have been anyone, a neighbor, a teacher, someone you'd pass in the grocery store without a second thought. He carried a duffel bag and called out in that false sweet voice, "Riley, I brought your medicine. You need your medicine, sweetheart." Riley's whisper was barely audible. That's what he told my parents. That I needed medicine. He kept me in a basement. There were photos of other girls. Girls who looked like me. I think they're dead. The man was getting closer now. 30 feet. 25. 20. Melissa heard the 911 dispatcher's voice in her ear, promising police were 2 minutes away. But 2 minutes might as well be an eternity. The footsteps stopped. "I know someone's helping you, Riley," the man said, his voice losing its false sweetness. "I can smell the fear. And I promise you, whoever it is, they're making the biggest mistake of their life." 15 feet away. Close enough that Melissa could see his face clearly now. The flat, dead eyes of a predator who'd perfected his craft. Who left no witnesses. Who'd done this before and would do it again. Riley shook violently beside her. Ranger's growl deepened to something primal, ancient. And Melissa made a decision that every logical part of her brain screamed against. A decision that could cost her everything. Her life, her unborn babies, her future. But looking at Riley's terrified face, she knew there was no other choice. She stood up. "She's not going anywhere with you." Melissa's voice was steadier than she felt. She stepped fully into view, placing herself directly between Riley and the predator. One hand on her pregnant belly. The other on Ranger's collar. The dog vibrated with barely contained violence, a weapon of war, waiting to be unleashed. The man stopped. His eyes swept over Melissa, pregnant, alone, vulnerable, and then landed on Ranger. Military working dogs have a look. A bearing. And predators who've survived this long learn to recognize threats. "You're making a mistake, lady," the man said, his voice cold now. "That girl is my niece. This is a family matter." "The police are pulling onto my street right now," Melissa lied. The sirens were still too far away, but she kept her voice firm, unwavering. "You have about 30 seconds before they see you. I suggest you use them wisely." 5 eternal seconds. They existed in a triangle of pure tension. Predator. Protector. Prey. The man's hand moved toward his duffel bag. Ranger lunged forward 2 feet, snapping the air inches from the man's face with a sound like a gunshot. The predator froze. Melissa could see him calculating. Could he reach them before the dog tore him apart? Could he silence them all before police arrived? Was this catch worth the risk? Then he smiled. The most chilling smile Melissa had ever seen. A smile that said, "This isn't over. I know where you live. You've just signed your own death warrant. You have no idea what you've done," he said softly. And then he turned and walked away. The moment he disappeared into the trees, Melissa collapsed to her knees, her entire body shaking uncontrollably. Ranger pressed against her side. Riley sobbed into the dirt. The sirens were louder now. So close. They'd survived. Impossibly, miraculously, they'd survived. But Melissa didn't know yet that she'd just stared down one of the FBI's most wanted. A serial killer responsible for the deaths of 7 teenage girls over 12 years. Riley would be his only survivor. Because a dog heard her crying. And refused to let his owner walk away. Within minutes, Melissa's quiet suburban property transformed into ground zero. Squad cars. Ambulances. K-9 units. Crime scene investigators. The machinery of justice mobilizing around one impossible rescue. Riley was wrapped in blankets, surrounded by paramedics and victim advocates, giving her statement between sobs. Taken from a mall parking lot 11 days ago. Kept in a basement. Drugged. Isolated. She'd escaped only that morning, running blindly until exhaustion had dropped her in that ditch where she'd been certain she would die. A detective sat beside Melissa while EMTs checked her blood pressure and the twins' heartbeats. "Your dog," the detective said, shaking her head in wonder. Belgian Malinois, their senses are extraordinary. He must have heard her crying from inside your house. From hundreds of feet away. He saved that girl's life, Mrs. Chun. What about the man? Melissa asked. Did you catch him? The detective's expression darkened. His name is Marcus Webb. Wanted in 3 states for abduction, assault, and murder. We've been hunting him for 4 years. He's suspected in the disappearances of at least 7 teenage girls. The detective paused, her hand resting on Melissa's shoulder. He doesn't leave witnesses, Mrs. Chun. Ever. You standing up to him, that took extraordinary courage. But it also saved your life. Predators like Webb are cowards at their core. Your dog's aggression, your refusal to back down, the approaching sirens, it broke his decision loop. You're both alive because you didn't give him time to think. When Melissa called her husband halfway around the world, she could barely speak through tears. Ranger alerted, was all she could say. David's eyes filled with understanding, then with tears of his own. Good boy, he whispered. That's my good boy. You kept them safe, Ranger. You kept my whole world safe. Through the phone, Melissa heard David's entire unit, hardened Marines who'd served with Ranger in Afghanistan, erupting in cheers. For the dog who'd never forgotten his mission. To detect danger. To protect. To save lives, no matter the cost. If this story has moved you, take a moment right now to hit that subscribe button. Because stories like Ranger's, stories of courage, instinct, and the unbreakable bond between humans and animals, deserve to be told. And when you subscribe, you're helping us share more true stories of heroes who walk on 4 legs. Don't let this be the last inspiring story you hear. Subscribe now, and let's honor these incredible animals together. 3 weeks later, Melissa sat in a hospital bed, cradling 2 perfect daughters, Sophia and Grace, while Ranger lay beneath the bed. The nurses had bent every rule to let him stay. Some bonds, they understood, couldn't be broken by hospital policy. Riley visited with her parents, her face still healing but her eyes bright with reclaimed life. She carried drawings from her trauma therapy, a dog with angel wings, a pregnant woman standing like a superhero, 2 babies surrounded by light. I'm going to be a veterinarian, Riley announced. I'm going to train dogs to find people like me. People who are lost. So other girls get found. Riley's mother approached Melissa with tears streaming down her face. They caught him, she said. Marcus Webb. At the Canadian border yesterday. The FBI found evidence linking him to 7 other missing girls over 12 years. Her voice broke. Riley is the only one who survived. The only one who escaped. Because she ran far enough to collapse on your property. Because your dog heard her when no one else did. 7 other families who would never get this reunion. 7 other girls who hadn't been lucky enough to fall unconscious in the backyard of a woman with a combat-trained dog. The weight of it was crushing and humbling all at once. When David arrived 2 days later, his deployment cut short, he fell to his knees beside Ranger and wept. For his daughters he'd almost lost. For his wife who'd faced evil alone. For the girl whose life had been saved by the dog he'd trained in the deserts of Afghanistan. You kept them safe, David whispered over and over. You kept my whole world safe when I couldn't be here. That night, David sat by the window with Ranger's head in his lap, watching his family breathe. Some debts, he understood, could never be repaid. Only honored. 6 years later, Melissa stood at the grand opening of the Riley Chin Foundation for Canine Search and Rescue, a state-of-the-art facility dedicated to training dogs and handlers to find the missing, the endangered, the lost. Named for Riley, the survivor who inspired it. And for Sophia and Grace Chun, the twins who'd been in utero during the rescue. A reminder that one moment of courage can ripple forward through generations. Riley, now 21 and in veterinary school, stood beside Melissa cutting the ribbon. The crowd erupted, law enforcement, K-9 units, families of missing persons, journalists. But Melissa's eyes were on Ranger. Gray-muzzled now and officially retired. Wearing a Medal of Valor and a vest embroidered with one word, hero. Her 6-year-old daughters sat on either side of him, hands buried in his fur. They'd grown up hearing the story of the day their dog had known what their mother couldn't see. A journalist approached with a question, Mrs. Chun, what would you say you learned from that day? Melissa looked at Ranger, at Riley, at her daughters, at David standing proud in his dress uniform. "I learned that intelligence comes in forms we're not trained to recognize," she said. "I spent my career trusting data, but no spreadsheet could tell me what Ranger knew in his bones. That evil was close, that someone needed help, that my schedule mattered infinitely less than a stranger's survival." She paused, her hand resting on Ranger's head. "He didn't just save Riley's life that day. He saved mine too. He showed me what it means to love without condition, to protect without hesitation, to trust instinct over intellect. Every girl we find through this foundation, every family we reunite, it all traces back to one dog who refused to let me walk past suffering." As cameras flashed and the crowd applauded, Ranger's tail thumped softly against the ground. He was just a dog who'd done what dogs have done for thousands of years. Protected his pack. Trusted his senses. Loved without calculation. But in doing so, he'd set in motion a chain of events that would save hundreds more lives. That evening, as sunset painted the sky gold and crimson, Melissa sat with Ranger and Riley in comfortable silence, three souls bound by a moment of terror transformed into purpose. "Thank you," Riley whispered, scratching behind Ranger's ears. "For not giving up when you couldn't see me. For dragging her to me when it made no sense. For being exactly who you are." Ranger's eyes drifted closed, his breathing deep and peaceful. He was just a dog. But he was also proof that sometimes the most sophisticated intelligence isn't artificial or academic. It's ancient, instinctual, and written in the covenant between species. A covenant that says, "I will keep you safe, even when you don't know you're in danger. I will lead you to those who need you, even when you cannot see them. I will love you without condition, and that love will manifest not in words, but in action." Some moments don't end. They expand, radiating outward through time, touching lives that will never know the name of the dog who started it all. But Melissa would know. Riley would know. And every person saved by the foundation would carry forward the legacy of a Belgian Malinois who'd done nothing more, and nothing less, than what love demanded. If Ranger's story reminded you why we need to trust, protect, and honor the animals in our lives, then share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Send it to a friend who has a loyal companion. Share it with someone who's ever doubted their instincts. Or simply leave a comment below telling us about the animal who changed your life. Because these stories matter. These bonds matter. And when we share them, we create a community that celebrates the extraordinary love between humans and animals. So hit that share button right now. Let's make sure Ranger's legacy reaches as far as his courage did.